Good evening, welcome back to In the Khud. This is 7th April 2023, 1917, 7:17 pm and fairway mistake. Good evening, welcome back to In the Khud. This is 7th April 2023, 1918, 7:18 pm and I'm doing this for the third time because I keep forgetting that I have to switch from this camera to this camera. There's a learning curve, but I have to be mindful, it's difficult. Being mindful is one of the most difficult things to do, but I'm learning, I'm getting there, I'll probably get there at some point. I am late today. I am supposed to leave by 7:30 for the gym so that by 9 o'clock I can do a decent enough workout, but no worries, I'm just gonna go ahead with the documentation today. The major thing that I want to cover today is how you can have one particular texture stretch across multiple instances. So yesterday until night when I came back from the gym, I was trying to figure out why this thing is not working out, and the reason that I understood was stretching of UV maps. So what I did is I started from scratch again, and if I look at my logo placeholder, this is the logo placeholder. So one thing I discovered is that no matter what the shape of your final object onto which you want to cast this texture, you can still use a box structure. So I just made a very simple box, and if you look at it, it's just a cuboid. There are no edges on it, and it's nothing done of that sort. The major thing here is the UV unwrap. So if I come in here, and you see that there is a very custom UV map that I have built myself, laid it out the way I wanted to. This is the front face, then just next to it is the right face, and then is the left face, if you see here, and these are bottom, top and behind face. Now if I was to just select all of them and do a UV unwrap, this is what Blender gives you by default, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the problem is when you will cast it onto another surface, what you'll have to do is in the texture mapping, you'll have to play with very weird values in order to come up with a position where it's actually looking like one continuous texture, and I'll explain what that means. So basically you have to be very careful with how you texture unwrap it. Now once you do this, you export this UV layout and come into Photoshop or Krita or GIMP or any such photo editing software, is that what you call it? And what I did is I placed this, and on top of it, this is the overlay that you get from Blender. You just export it out, and then you make your texture like you want it to. Okay, and then you export this image, and what this image will be, that has to go on the material. Now I will open that material up. So if I just open GeoNodes, select this just for reference, I come into my shading. So this is the main material that we're dealing with. It's called Podium with Logo. It's a little not visible. Let's bring it in. Yeah, Podium with Logo. This is the material that we're dealing with. And here you see I've done some math here. I'll get to that. But primarily what you want to do is you want to add an image texture to the base color, and this here is the PNG square placeholder UV1 unwrapped, the PNG that I exported from Photoshop after doing all of that. So the work of the texture and the material that we made inside Blender for the temporary thing, that is done. You don't have to worry about that. Now that you import here, and to that you do mapping, and primarily the way you do that is mapping. Just ignore these math nodes in between. You see the texture coordinate node has to go from object and not from generated or UV. So once that happens, you'll have this. Now over here, these math nodes are just for control. If you see, what I'm doing is I try to play around with the rotation and location and the scale, and then I figure out that I need a value which I increase like this, and the texture changes. Now this is happening only because this value, let's say here 15.9, is getting divided by 1000. That is being multiplied by -1 for X, and that is being fed into Y and Z. So if this wasn't the case, what you'll have to do is 0.000015, and then you can't move it with a slider. Even if you shift and move it, it becomes very difficult because you only get 3 places at the end. So this was a little bit of math I had to do. And even for the location at the same, divided by 100, then add 12.5, which is the original position, to Y, to make sure that it's easier to map onto it. Now the other big thing that I did is because on this material of the podium, if I can find podium somehow, if I go into the edit mode here, I have 4 or 5 slots for material. There is podium, there is pool, there is podium brown, there is swimming pool, podium floor. So what I did is, because still there was some weird stretching happening, I just assigned the podium with logo, the material that we worked on, to these front faces, and all the other faces here I just assigned a podium brown color, which was another important step here because I was getting some weird stretching over here from this part on, so I just put like a brown color there. That was the major thing as far as progress is concerned. The other thing I was really trying hard to do is, you see there is this space in between these two paths, and I wanted to somehow like fill it with grass so that it would feel a little more fuller, and I tried to do a few things about that, but it just did not work. Other than that, one important change that I did is the cars that were in the scene. If I just switch the vehicles collection on, the cars are moving along the track, and this actually goes into the inner track, the blue car, and then it goes inside here. So the very beautiful thing about moving stuff around inside Blender using constraints and object constraints and like follow path and stuff is that if you want to make changes, you just come in here and you change the constraint. Okay, if I go to the edit mode of the constraint, you see it was initially like a circle. I just added a few vertices here, and that directs where the car will go. So you don't have to do any manual adjustment, any keyframes, you just adjust the offset animation. Okay, so that is that, and I will quickly go ahead and show you the final export. So this is how the final export looks. VLC is playing on my other screen. I have done a bit of color correction in it, and I have done sound design. Awesome. This makes me really happy because this is definitively, if it gets through, the client approves it and stuff like those, this is going to be definitively my first 3D full-fledged 3D project that has gone out commercially, and I can put it on my portfolio as well. So there is this other character animation based project also that I'm working on. So slowly and steadily we will finally be getting our 3D portfolio together. And now with these projects I have just learned so much that I'm gonna go ahead and start making full-fledged shorts for Click Reflect, the kind of thing that I've always wanted to do, and now I have the tool set and the capability to execute that. So really grateful, really fortunate at this point that I'm getting to work on projects like these, which really are deriving the best out of me and like helping me learn so much and grow at the same time. And I technically get paid for doing this. So yeah, it's an awesome time to be alive, and really looking forward to the coming future. That's it for today's documentation. Thanks so much for being in the code. I will catch you tomorrow. Peace.